Erick Eiser, aka Hornsby. Man, how you doing, brother? It's a great song.
I'm doing. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Dude, I've been jamming your EP. I got the very VIP sneak peek. Was able to check the tunes out, and it's all I've been listening to. And I love, everything that you've done throughout your whole life. But this is a really awesome culmination of everything sonically that I've kind of noticed, from your time in the dig and everything that you contribute. Because I'm an actor, but I can't play, but I'm a fucking music enthusiast. So I'm very envious of what you can
Oh,
do, man.
thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks for checking out the music. I'm really glad that you like it. I'm envious of you because the performance skills are something that are important for musicians as well. So
Dude, I've seen you
you
live. You
got your own
got
thing going
you
on.
got the chops and you're a fucking pretty boy. You're fine, man. You're
Oh man,
you're ready
no.
to take over.
I haven't been hitting the gym like you though, man. I see. I check you out on Instagram. I know how hard you're working.
Oh, well, when you quit drinking and doing drugs, you got to fuck yourself up some other way, But
I hear. Well, that I think that's a positive way. I hope it's a positive way.
yeah, man. So I guess for the audience listening, how I discovered you is like one of my all-time favorite bands is The Dig. And I don't, you probably, obviously we didn't meet till like 2 months ago. And, but I've always followed you man, I don't want anyone to get excited here, but I was a keyboard player in a garage
Ah.
band in high school that was very successful. So
Oh yeah.
my eyes were always on you, man. And
Oh man.
I went to this party back in 2008 when like NYU was like still kind of up and coming, and Bushwick was still kind of Bushwick. And it was like NYU has this program called Clive Davis, which is like a lot of very famous musicians have come through there and studied. And so they had this like literal warehouse. I think it was on Morgan or Halsey or whatever.
Okay.
And they have like they
Yeah.
had 4 different rooms and of different bands. And then I came in and you guys were in the first room, and that was more my thing. And I checked you guys out, and it just fucking blew me away. And then I think it was Emil that handed me a copy, and it was you when you guys were hanging out. She's Gonna Kill That Boy, Penitentiary, and one other
Oh
one.
wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like back in that day.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
That was a really fun time for sure. Well, I mean, we're psyched that you are into the music, and I know from speaking with the other guys of how much you were into the dig. So it's really cool to hear.
But dude, I'm into you. So let's talk about your journey. Where did you
Cool.
grow up, man?
I grew up in the Coachella Valley in Southern California.
No
So the
way.
Palm Springs area. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that must be weird now that Coachella is such a commercial fucking thing.
Yeah. I remember I worked in a record store when I was in high school, and I remember I think it was the first or second Coachella Fest, and I remember just seeing the stack of tickets. It was back in the day when people were still buying CDs and things like that. And
Did
so
you go to the first one?
I didn't go.
Oh.
I didn't have enough money to go, and I wasn't cool enough, so I didn't get a chance to go. But I did contemplate stealing the tickets, but that was not.
Oh man, you
I
should have.
wouldn't have gotten away with that. So, but I think I remember Rage Against the Machine was playing.
Oh yeah,
one
that's
year,
right.
and
Yeah.
and then Radiohead was playing me within the first 3 years or something, and so it was really exciting because the desert. It didn't seem like, I mean, there was a lot of cool things happening there in terms of like the Queens of the Stone Age desert raves and some stuff like that, but we
Yeah,
didn't
it was
really have anything.
also Jesse from Eagles of Death Metal, right? They both came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both.
Yeah.
I have heard some stories. Actually, I think that if I'm not mistaken, Jesse Hughes worked at the Record Alley in Palm Desert where I worked. I'm not sure if he did or not. Maybe that could have been a rumor, but I know all the people that I worked with, they were a lot older than me, and they all went to high school with those guys. So
No way, man.
yeah, that was kind of cool.
Well, dude, before we like really dig in, pun intended, what did your parents do? Were they artists? Like, how did this art bug happen for you?
No, not really. They just kind of had pretty normal jobs. My mom was a public school teacher.
Oh, mine too. No way.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. So, and my dad was in finance, and just kind of a pretty typical, solid upbringing, and really supportive parents. But yeah, I don't think there wasn't really any musicians in the family that I can think of.
Do you have siblings at all, or?
I had siblings. I had one of my cousins really turned me. Sorry, my sister. Yeah, she was in music younger, so it didn't come from necessarily
Got it.
a sibling, but music was always being listened to, and my dad really turned me on to some cool stuff when I was a kid, and my cousins listened to really cool music, and so I just kind of got sucked in, I think, through listening.
Well, if you don't mind setting the landscape, because like as we kind of just spoke about Coachella, I feel like the narrative about the Coachella literal area in Palm Springs now is very different than what it originally was. Because like in the 70s and 80s, it was like where rock stars and movie stars vacationed.
Yeah.
But what was it like actually living there full time?
I think I probably grew up in the interim between the rock stars and movie stars coming down to party for spring break, the Coachella Fest era. When I was growing up, it was kind of, a lot of desert lots. I used to wait for the bus, and there was nothing but desert lots all around me. And now it was like, when you
it wasn't really developed, is what you're saying.
It wasn't developed at all, or not nearly to the extent that it is now. And I think, and I still think that maybe there's like 50% of us live there year round. And then, the golf courses and things like that, and the nice resorts and such that people come for to get out of the cold, and especially during the months of November through March is absolutely gorgeous there. It was I felt like it felt like a safe place to grow up, and it was fun. The public schools were big. There was like 2,500 kids in my high school.
Oh, so you didn't have like a ghost town feeling?
No, it wasn't. That's the interesting thing, I think, maybe, is that there's 1,000 kids in my middle school, and there's a lot of kids at my elementary. And it was very diverse. So it didn't feel like a small town, but yet I think it really was in terms of exposure to art and things like that. There didn't feel like there was a whole lot of that. And just, it was difficult, I think, to I was like dying to be in a band my whole life, and to find other people who wanted to do that with their lives. And it was really difficult to find that there. Just because I think that's where the small town sort of started to show itself in that way.
And talk to me about that impetus. Where do you think that arrived from? Like watching MTV, or was there a record? Was there a moment where you were like, this is, because I'm an actor and I kind of remember my moment. It was like Jaws, but for you, was it just a series of things, or was it isolated?
I don't know if there was a specific moment that I decided, but I just remember that my parents were really good about keeping us busy and letting us try stuff out. Like, hey, you want to take swimming lessons, or, let's play some baseball, or let's, they always kind of encouraged us to do activities. And then they got me a keyboard, and I took some piano lessons, but it wasn't serious. They weren't intense piano lessons or anything. Just
you weren't like doing Chopin recitals, or
no, nothing like that. Just kind of like getting me introduced to it. And they weren't really strict. They encouraged me to like kind of, do it, but they didn't really like watch me practice, or they didn't like keep tabs on me really. But I just got super into it, and
that's beautiful, because that makes sense, because usually you hate things your parents force upon you, and because they kind of gave you that cool space, you're like, actually, I fucking love this,
Yeah. It was kind of like, like, do you want to try this? And I was like, sure. And then I realized at some point, like maybe when I got Nirvana Nevermind, I realized I could play the songs on the keyboard. Like I learned I didn't know what they were called. I didn't know they were called power chords or whatever. But I just kind of learned, all the songs off of that on the keyboard. And I was like, I kind of then started thinking that I wanted to play guitar, but I just kind of stuck with keyboards for a while, and eventually picked up guitar. But and so I think at that moment, once I figured out that I could play songs that I listened to that I really loved.
Yeah.
And like as a 10-year-old kid or whatever, then I started to think like, this is something that I really want to do and I really love.
before you left, was the narrative of Queens of the Stone Age in existence yet, or were they just getting up?
I honestly I wasn't that cool. I didn't even know about them
Got it.
when I was growing up. I mean, I knew of them from working in the record store, and I obviously knew their name. I just hadn't really checked out their music yet. I'm a huge fan of theirs now, but yeah. So I guess they were definitely like the darlings of the desert for sure. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Like so.
That's awesome, man. In high school, any bands that you did or no?
Yeah, really bad bands that aren't.
That's it. Mine was too.
Yeah, I was dying to be in a punk rock band my whole life. I was dying to be in a punk rock band, but I just I was kind of a shy kid, so I didn't really, it was difficult for me to make that happen on my own. And then once I kind of found out about some kids playing, and then it was kind of hard because I played keyboards. So, playing keyboards in a punk rock band and then also just like the type of music I was listening to and the type of music that other kids were listening to it was never really in sync, and just in terms of like who I was hanging out with. But I played in some high school bands that it was definitely a lot of fun, and some of my good friends still. So.
And do you feel like with the keyboard and guitar, the natural progression was learning to sing because you got an incredible voice? We heard.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. I was extremely shy and timid about singing when I was a kid, and I definitely sang a little bit, not in any sort of, I never really took any lessons or figured out how to do it properly, but I always kind of sang melodies and came up with my own songs and stuff as a kid. And then eventually, when I got into music school and it was more instrumental.
Berkeley, right?
Berkeley, yeah. I went to Berkeley and just kind of focused on my instrument and spent a lot of time practicing and played with Emil and David. And then we started writing songs together. And as the dig progressed, it was kind of, they both wanted to sing, and it didn't really make sense for us to have 3 singers. And I was kind of just cool, just helping write songs and writing music and writing songs. And I didn't really have the urge to sing or sort of like front the band. And then eventually, I just decided that that's something I wanted to do. And I kind of dived into singing a little bit more and started working on it. And so, yeah.
That's awesome, man. So let's talk about Berkeley, because that's, for all the actors listening, obviously Juilliard's a great music school as well, but it's another Juilliard. Berkeley's like one of the best schools in the world for music.
It has that reputation for sure. I thought it was.
Were your parents supportive of you going there?
They were, yeah. I think it was like, for me, I used it as the one chance that I saw to kind of get out of the desert and to meet some other musicians. And I felt like if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be, I just felt like I might not be able to pursue music in the same way, because I wanted to be surrounded by people who wanted to do that with their life.
Yeah.
And nobody that I knew was interested in like absorbing themselves in that way. And David and Emil, when I met them, we became such good friends. And
was that just a class where you guys met? I mean, for me, that's a historic moment because I love that band. So
yeah. I actually remember the day I met those guys. It was actually just in in the dorm rooms around. We went to a summer program for musicians at Berkeley, and it was kind of like an introduction to the school in a sense. And I kind of met them there, and I just remember being really impressed with how into music they were, and how obsessed they were with it, and how much they wanted to play all the time. And I was like, holy shit, I've never experienced people who want to do this for this long every single day. And I was like, this is what, these are the kind of people I really want to be around, because it wasn't happening where I was growing up. And so that's kind of why I felt like I needed to do that and go there. And I think it was a really good experience. I think that at some point you kind of feel like maybe you want to pursue, you have an idea of what you want to pursue, but you kind of like, it's the conflict of doing the work necessary to like, pass all your classes and get through and get the degree, but also wanting to get out there and just kind of like you figured out what you want to do, and you want to start working on that.
So do you feel like it was 50-50, like 50% of your focus was on classwork and 50% was focused on the dig, or was it,
the dig and being, I think the pursuit of being in a band and the pursuit of writing music and writing songs was 100% all the time.
Wow.
And then the classwork was just like, essentially it was just practicing, because it's a very jazz sort of,
I've heard that.
Yeah, jazz focused school, which is cool. But there's people who come from a lot of different sort of musical backgrounds, and it's not only that, and you can certainly find whatever you want, and you can find the people that maybe you're compatible with musically, for sure. But it is very jazz focused. So I was a performance major, so that was a lot of what was pushed on me to do, and you get kind of sucked into that world, and you explore it. But I think that what I realized is that a lot of those kids that were going there for jazz and who were just amazing players, they kind of grew up with that kind of music, and they understood the culture, and they were steeped in it from an early age. And I kind of was super into music, but I didn't really get into jazz until later. And then you kind of learn, like, maybe being a jazz pianist wasn't in the cards. It's not really what I want to pursue, but it was still extremely helpful in terms of just proficiency on the instrument, and just like the work ethic that it kind of instills, and just being able to sit down for a long time and work on something.
Yeah.
And practice. So.
And particularly in Hornsby and also in some of the records with the dig, you have an amazing utilization of synthesizers. Was that something you've always been interested in?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, I've always had some kind of cool synthesizer, I kind of, as you get older and you kind of learn the world of recording and gear and things like that, you come across more of that kind of stuff, and then you just get obsessed with it and you start buying it. And
the Juno D or the Rolands, and for sure, Juno and Moog and Prophet and all there's an endless list of amazing synthesizers, and so I'm definitely super into that, and I think they're just a lot of fun to play and to experiment with. That's awesome, man. And so you, David and Emil, you guys all graduated, right?
Yeah, we did. We all graduated. Yeah.
And was there, a discussion while you were there about moving to New York and pursuing this, or did that just kind of happen?
Definitely. No, it was like pretty much the goal the entire time we were there.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And it's tough to find, partners that you can open yourself up to and not feel dominated by, and feel like you can be contributing to something that's a whole, but is
definitely
3 parts. So talk to me about that experience, moving to New York, graduating art school, which is tough for any artist. And, what year is this? I mean, I'm not trying to date you, but this is like 2007, right? Or
yeah, around that. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yes. So what was it?
So I think 2007 is when we moved to New York City. Yeah.
So at that point, Napster had already existed and kind of music sales were dead, but the independent band thing was still a very viable thing. I think the Black Keys really had a big year that year.
Yeah.
So what was your guys', I guess, positioning? Like, what were the moves you guys started making?
Well, first we started, I remember we kind of like got really serious about meeting up every day and writing songs and practicing and just getting good as a band, and like discovering what kind of music we wanted to make, because at that point we had played a lot of different styles of music, and it was kind of like we needed to sort of make some decisions in terms of like what we're going for here.
Yeah.
And then we kind of just fell more into some, songwriting and I guess at that time more of an indie rock type of vibe, but and then so we just started playing and just being in New York. And at that time we hung out in the Lower East Side a lot, where
before it was gentrified and
before everything just keeps pushing east. And then so it was interesting. It was still like a really cool, fun sort of place to hang out, a lot of rock and roll bands and a really cool vibe down there. And we started to do residencies at pianos, and that's kind of where and we would just go down and we would just plaster the
East Village with posters. I remember it. Yeah.
And Emil's girlfriend Allie would make all of our posters, like some really, really awesome posters that she made, and we would just plaster the town. And we would actually bring some people out to the shows, and then we started to sell out our residencies every week at pianos. And it was the shows were, I remember, just like super energetic and a lot of fun. And
you guys became a town favorite pretty quick.
It seemed like things were going pretty well, and then we ended up playing Mercury Lounge and selling that out, and then the promoters at Bowery Ballroom would have us open up for bands there to kind of help with the draw, and from there we kind of got a booking agent, and then got to go on the road and tour with.
You're doing Portugal the Man back in the day, right?
Yeah. We toured with probably the most fun shows that we've ever played. Wow. It's just like so much fun. Our first time being on the road like that, and opening up for Portugal the Man just as they were kind of coming into this like massive success. So the rooms were still small. They were like 500 to 1,000 person rooms.
Oh man.
And
so
they were
cool.
Just like sweaty and intense and just so much fun.
And talk to me for you specifically, Eric, like during this time when you look back on that, to go from art school to starting a band to moving to New York to getting it going, that it sounds like it all was pretty fast. How was your head at this time? Were you over the moon? Were you kind of?
Oh yeah. Having a good time and enjoying it. There's always that, it's not all like this picture. Well, it didn't always feel like things were happening in this perfect way or things, because we struggled as a band and we still do, and it's like it wasn't that we necessarily reached some great success or anything like that as the Dig, but that experience was incredible, and that experience was really fun, but it did feel like a grind, for sure. And so I think it was just a lot of, at that time for me, it was just really exciting for the most part and a lot of fun. And you kind of always have your expectations set really, really high. And so you're trying not to get disappointed when things don't work out in the way that you expect or want them to. But I think what I'm left with is that it was just overall just like a really, really fun experience. And my friendship with David and Emil is just truly unique, and I think we kind of really pushed each other to get better as musicians and songwriters, and so that's kind of what I think about most, is just the experience in terms of how much fun it was, and what I learned from working with them, and like it's I mean, not. There were a lot of great things that happened, and there were a lot of things that like we really agonized over and gave us a lot of anxiety and were really difficult, So, but overall, it was like an incredible experience for sure.
That's awesome, man. And 3 records and like 3 or 4 EPs later, you guys decide to move to LA. What was that? What was the impetus behind that decision? Because like at that point, the Dig was still going, right?
Yeah, the Dig was still going, but that was kind of the beginning of like what felt like a big change in everybody's life. And I think we all moved for different reasons. We all had different reasons for moving, but we all were just so close that.
So it wasn't a band decision; it was individuals.
It wasn't solely based on the band. I think that probably played a role in everybody's decision to do it. it's kind of like weighing all of it was mentioned that one of us was going to do that. And at the time, I think David's, his girlfriend, Kristen, was living out here. She was actually living in Palm Springs, and I grew up here, and I always wanted to come back. And Emil wanted to move out. Emil and his wife, Allie, wanted to move out here just because they wanted to move. And so just like, all of those things, everyone had their own reasons for being here. And then being able to continue the band was also something that was important to us, or being able to, at the very least, being able to make music together, to continue that was really important to us. So, it was the decision. I think everyone had their own reasons, and the band was one factor that played into that for sure.
And then talk to me for you as Erick moving back to the West Coast, which, as you mentioned, was, close to home. What was that experience like, having spent so much, I mean, it was about a decade in New York, right?
Yeah.
But like, how was it finding yourself in 2018 in LA and having to re-navigate, music in a town that's saturated with, entertainment. It revolves.
Honestly, I think it was, it was easier than what I kind of expected to a certain degree. I love California, so I was really happy to be back in Southern California, and I was closer to family and some old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, and kind of actually it was kind of easier to meet people out here for whatever reason. And I started to kind of get involved with other projects. We were so hyper focused on the dig in New York City that we had such tunnel vision that I don't know if we didn't allow ourselves to kind of
exist outside of that
just because we were so obsessed.
Yeah.
And then, so I think in a way it was kind of a healthy release from that, where like everybody started to kind of get involved with other projects and their own projects. And so it was kind of like, it was refreshing really to move out here and like play in other bands, do other things musically, and start my own project. And so, I think it provided that opportunity. And it was kind of easy to kind of fall into that out here.
And talk to me, with Hornsby, were the seeds of that formed during your time at the dig? As you said, you had tunnel vision, or did that not really come to fruition until you moved to LA?
Well, I think that we all always had our own music that we were writing, and I always had my own, music and songs that I had written, and I think that was one of the battles, or one of the something that we all sort of battled when we were playing in the dig was that we all had our own music, and there was only so many songs can go on an album, and like, how do we do this so that everyone feels like they're a part of it? And people's songs are going to get
that's the hardest part of being a band, man, because like, dude, I quit 3 times over that shit.
Exactly. And I'm sure we all had moments where we felt like we wanted to do that too. But so it kind of I think we all always knew that we were gonna release our own music at some point, because it's just not possible to get all of the things that you really want to get out there in one band with 3 songwriters. It's just, it's too, I think everyone feels a little stifled to a certain degree when you're in that situation. So I think it was just, in terms of like Hornsby and all of that, I think it's just like myself always writing songs. And I think, the actual sort of putting it all together happened out here in LA, but it's definitely something that I always wanted to do.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm curious, as you guys got to LA and made the decision to dissolve the dig and start something new, I imagine that yearning for something new also, as you mentioned, everyone kind of finally focused on their thing. Emil scored, David got Creature of Doom going. Did you start to really focus on like, I want an EP, or was it just writing that turned into an EP?
I was writing, and then I felt like an EP would probably be a good place to start.
Yeah.
A small collection of music. And I think that I think that once everybody started to do that, and then everyone was on their own timeline with that kind of stuff.
Totally.
So, you know, it's just like, it was just kind of realized that sort of tacitly that everybody was kind of doing their own thing. And yeah, so I just started to work on my own thing, and yeah, and like I said, there wasn't really necessarily a timeline that was around anybody else's decision to do something, but just kind of realizing that everybody was doing that. We all kind of realized we were doing that at the same time, and started to focus on our own project.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's something
Yeah.
I talk with actors a lot on the show, and for musicians, it's similar but different. Is, for actors, it's finding their voice. For musicians, it can be finding your voice, but it can be finding your sound and finding your tone. And
Mm.
obviously, for a band, that dictates one certain thing because the band has to fall within the rules of
Yeah.
the genre. But for you, talk to me about Hornsby and finding the sound. Did you have the
Mhm.
idea for it sonically, or was it kind of just like a trial by fire process of writing songs and seeing what was kind of cohesive?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think for the most part, I tried to take everything that even from making music as a kid, like whatever kind of silly beats I would make on my little synthesizer in high school and things, and just trying to take in every aspect of what was kind of pure, or what was um, what I felt like I was really true to myself in terms of like where I come from musically, and put that all together. And I think it was a little bit of a trial by fire, because the process can seem arbitrary at sometimes, like where to even begin.
Yeah.
So I think you just kind of have to follow the threads and the inspiration that are happening in the moment. And I felt like, specifically for this EP, I would get really inspired by just like taking some obscure loop from like it could be anything, but like from some point in a song, or from some section of a song that that you might not expect, like not necessarily the hook, but like some obscure moment that I felt was interesting, and then I would either like recreate that, or just use it as inspiration, and write a song around it, and then delete it or something.
Oh,
But
that's
and so
awesome.
yeah, so I kind of started there, and then yeah, I kind of once I had sort of written a couple songs that seemed like they were that they had similar aspects about them, kind of was like, oh, kind of realized that like that might be something to continue to follow and pursue in terms of how I was going to put songs together and put music together.
And having such a radical and gnarly music background as you do, I'm curious, because like, we always hear of records or EPs and someone working with a producer. Did you feel a need to have an outside influence on this, or was it all you the whole way through?
At first I did, and I got together with a couple of friends, and we worked on a song together, just because I didn't know if I could just produce and record myself. I just I had so used to doing everything with other people.
Yeah.
And I mean, writing songs, I felt like I could do on my own fine, but just like the actual production of it, I didn't know. But then I just kind of felt like during that session that it was something that it would be better if I did it on my own. And
Yeah.
I just started to do it, just dive in and figure it out.
That's awesome, man. And
Yeah.
and obviously, right now it's February 2021, but when did the seeds of this start to happen?
Uh, Good question. Well, I guess, in a sense, the seeds. I guess I always had like a bunch of songs lying around that I
Yeah.
would write, like I mentioned, that didn't get used for whatever reason. And I think maybe the seeds in terms of like saying to myself, I'm going to release an EP, and I'm going to, you know, start this new project, Hornsby, and sort of dive into the music that's on this EP, was probably about a year ago.
So almost would you say this whole thing was conceived and executed in the best sense of the term during the pandemic?
Yeah, part of it was, I had started a little bit before that, probably in the previous year, in terms of just like, you know, getting music together and like having like a sketches and things like that. But like, I think the heart of it really started to come together in that when we first quarantined. I believe, what was it, March, when
Yeah.
LA,
Yeah, it was like March
we all,
13th.
yeah. So it was kind of in that, like, there was 5 weeks I didn't see a single person, and I just worked on music every single day. So
Wow. And
yeah.
talk to me about, we listened to All My Love at the beginning. Was that always something that you had your eyes on for the single, or did that kind of just happen by the time you had a finished product?
That just kind of, I wasn't too worried about like singles or what I would release first. I just kind of wanted to put a strong collection of music together that I felt was cohesive, and first and foremost. And then I kind of just, I didn't necessarily, I wanted to come out with something, that, and then I felt like that song, after the fact, sort of represented the EP in a way, that some of the other songs didn't, because it has a little bit of everything that you might expect to hear
Yeah.
on the EP. So it's kind of a, what I like to call a twister. It kind
Yeah.
of a
I love it, man. Well, I mean, the EP's incredible, man. I've been jamming
thank
it
you.
since you ever gave it to me, and All My Love and When I Look You in Your Eyes. Am I saying that right? Sorry if I fucked
When
it
I
up.
look you in the eyes,
When I
yeah.
Look You in the Eyes are definitely two of my favorites.
Ah,
And man,
thanks so
like
much.
it's so awesome, and it's also simultaneously like when I try to describe it, I'm like it's kind of like I don't know, Glass Animals meets so many. It's so how would you describe it? Because I'm at a
Yeah, I really hate trying to
okay,
describe it,
so let's
but
skip
no,
that
no,
question.
no. But no, it's hard. But I would just say that I felt like I wanted to, you know, I wanted to try and explore, you know, reimagining samples and incorporating different styles of music without it sounding ridiculous. So it was a challenge in that way, to kind of incorporate everything all the different kinds of music that I listen to, and explore the palette, and try to um, create something that's cohesive out of all of that.
Yeah,
Was a challenge, and it was a challenge. It was something that I kind of set out to do.
that's awesome. And I'm
Yeah.
curious to ask you, because obviously having the dig start in 2007, I think everyone's goal that was in music at that time was to get a record and or publishing deal and to do the whole thing and do a tour and sell merch and sell records. But then technology shifted and SoundCloud and things opened up. So do you feel like now what you're able to do with Hornsby? I mean, there's no question you couldn't have done it in 2007, but how do you feel like technology kind of opened you up to, being able to just do this on your own? I feel like
Mm.
at least certainly in the 90s you couldn't do it on your own, and it sounds incredible. It's like
Thanks.
it's so
Thank you.
beautiful. Like talk to me
Thank you.
about that as craftsmanship, I guess is what I'm.
Yeah, I was having this discussion with a good friend of mine, Sonny DiPieri, who actually recorded some big stuff. He's a engineer and uh, producer here in Los Angeles. And we were just, and I think, in terms of, you mentioned selling merch and technology, I think and how technology sort of shifted how artists, put their music out, or what they do in terms of exposure, but also in terms of actually physically making their music. I think that digital recording is in a place where it's obviously becoming way more user friendly, and we're seeing, like, it's so saturated with great music. People are
Yeah.
able to they have access now in a way that they didn't have access before. Like, you don't need to necessarily go to a traditional studio. You can make like a great album in your bedroom. Obviously that's subjective, because everybody has a little bit of a different opinion or idea of what they would consider a great album, or a great song. But in terms of like creating music and recording music, it's become infinitely easier to do that. And so digital recording has really helped in that way. And for a lot of reasons that is, I mean, for obviously to have the budget to record and go into a traditional studio like that is really expensive. So people are able to kind of make their own music, and they're also kind of in control of what they want to do. To more, they can manipulate firsthand what it is they're after. And so I think in that way, actually making music has changed and become easier in terms of recording software and just access to, simplifying the process to a certain degree. And then, also, with playing bands and playing in the dig, like our approach was always to just like tour. We need to go on tour. Like, at one point, I don't even know if Instagram existed. For some of the time we were a band. So it's just kind of like we just grinded it out on the road, and which was really fun. But like, then I have friends in bands who maybe played a handful of shows, and they're streaming so well on Spotify. And the first time they played a sold out show because their music was passed around through other means. Through, internet and social media and things like that. So you don't necessarily feel this pressure of like, I got to do something I physically have to do something in order to, for better or for worse. I mean, it's a little bit, it gives you some, I think it takes the anxiety out of it a little bit in terms of like, it's so easy to send somebody your album, or it's so in different ways online. I think it's kind of an obvious way of, it's kind of an obvious sort of, it's obviously easier to reach people through that way than going from town to town, driving around in an old van, playing shows at night, which is also incredible and fun. But so in that way, I think it's changed a lot too, in terms of exposure, how you might find exposure for your art, for your music.
And I mean, it's a graphic word, but, for me as an actor, I've certainly felt castrated as, film productions have calmed down and theaters closed. Do you feel that way without being able to share, what you love to do with a live audience? Because so much.
Definitely. I was playing keyboards in another band too. We were about to go on a big tour, and I was really looking forward to that. Would have been a 2-month tour in May and June. And just not being able to play my own shows after putting out this EP. I would have loved to do an EP release show and play the songs live for the first time. And so that's kind of a bummer. So, I mean, it's really, I think for musicians, the live show, the live gig has kind of disappeared. And I think it's really sad for all of us. But I do think that it's just all of my friends and everyone I know that's making music haven't stopped, and they're all in their studios or in their bedrooms, and they're hacking away. So I don't know, I guess maybe a lot of us are kind of taking the time to just create more, and then we have our just kind of waiting patiently and anxiously for when we can play live again.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. And your music's so beautiful. I can't wait to hear it live. And any plans for like maybe a YouTube show or something, or?
I haven't really thought about that. I think I'm kind of just like primarily, we'll see what happens. It's definitely like, I've definitely thought about maybe putting together some kind of sort of studio performance or live performance in that way, but kind of really focused more on writing and continuing.
Oh, so there's a record hopefully in the future.
A record, singles, just like kind of whatever feels right. But I'm definitely, really focused on getting back into the studio and writing again. And but yeah, I definitely have thought about doing some sort of online live thing. It's not quite as exciting. It's not
the same. I know.
But I'm sure it would be fun to do. So it's definitely possible.
And I don't say this just because Emil's doing it, but dude, I would love to see you score something. Is that something you would
Yeah,
ever do?
sure. I would love to do something like that.
I'm
I've
gonna
worked
hire
with.
you for my next
Please
project.
do.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm totally down, man.
yeah.
Yeah, that is something that I've thought about getting into. Emil is obviously just um, writing some incredible music right now, and he's been a part of some really amazing movies, and his music is great. And I've been lucky enough to work with him on some of it, not in terms of scoring, just in terms of playing and coming up with a couple of little arrangement ideas on piano and things. So I've been kind of able to uh, be a fly on the wall to a certain degree in terms of like what he's doing, and he's brought me in on stuff. So it's been a lot of fun, and it is something I would enjoy doing.
That's amazing, man. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I so greatly appreciate about musicians is very similar to actors is, 0.01% of us become Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? We're all in this for the long haul because we love the art. We love doing what we can
Yeah.
do, whether that's in front of 50 people, 500, 5,000, 50,000. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like I struggle with this myself, having been in
Yeah.
the ebbs of flow of a band and seeing other bands ebb and flow that you open for. How have you prevented yourself from becoming disillusioned?
That's a good question. I think, the experience of playing in the dig kind of helped with that. It kind of like when things don't work out in this sort of romantic way that you dream about, it kind of puts things into perspective, and then you have to question what's the reason that you're doing this, and as you said, it's just because that you can't imagine not doing it, and it's
Yeah.
just you have to do it. There's just it's I don't know that I have a better answer other than it's just something that I feel like I have to do. And then honestly, I think going through that experience, I just don't really care anymore. It's just kind
Yeah.
of more like, obviously I want people to hear the music, and I want to perform for a lot of people, and I want a lot of people to hear my music, but I guess I'm not doing it for that reason necessarily. You always hope that people like it and relate to it, but I think it's just something like you mentioned. Like once you get obsessed with the idea of doing it, it's really hard to think about doing anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree, man.
Yeah.
I'm obviously here to help in every capacity, but how can everyone listening help right now? What the fuck what can my army do for you?
Well, I would say, you can start by following me on Instagram or Twitter, and go to Spotify, Apple Music, and listening to the new song. So yeah, Hornsby is my artist name on Spotify and Apple Music, or you can follow me at Hornsby, or sorry, Horns_B
Yeah,
Instagram, Hornsby Music on Twitter, and yeah, just dive into the music.
that's awesome, man. And when is the full EP coming out?
I'm gonna release singles, sort of separate, or with some time in between. Every 4 weeks or so, I'll release a new single. So in a few months, I'll have the whole EP will be out.
Okay, amazing, man. Well,
Yeah.
dude, I fucking love it, and I'm gonna post every time a single comes out on both accounts. So, I mean, I'm so proud of you, man. I know we're
Thanks.
just kind of mid, but it's such a beautiful piece, and
Ah,
I think in sometimes beautiful ways and sometimes scary ways, the music we discover kind of scores the time of our life that we experience it in. So it's been so wonderful having this pieces of music to have, because I've been spoiled enough to have the entire EP during this time, and it's really it's kept me going, man. I forgot how much I needed new music. I even mentioned to you,
mm.
I'm kind of bad about listening to the same five records over and over again, because I get, if I'm being honest, kind of cunty about discovering new music. And dude, when this came, I was like, oh my god, this is so good. So you talked about the gym. It's all because of you, dude. It's your music.
ah, that you're digging it.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just saying, thank you so much and for the kind words. It means a lot to hear that, and I'm really happy that you're enjoying the EP and enjoying the music.
Well, thank you for doing it, man. And dude, two final questions for you, brother. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but if we could elongate it, it's been a rough year for anyone, and you did this amazing thing. What's been keeping you inspired?
Well, needing something to do for one thing. I mean, it's not, I think that like one major thing that's been keeping me inspired is just like, having a really great circle of friends who have such a great work ethic and who are always working on music, and keeping those connections close and kind of seeing what they're up to and checking out their music. And I think in that way, it's kind of like this really healthy, competitive sort of spirit of like, you just want to keep up with everybody. You want to keep up with your peers and your friends and fire.
Yeah. Well, Erick fucking Eiser, man, it was such a pleasure, dude. I got AKA Hornsby. I got so much love for you, man. This EP is incredible, and I know the best is yet to come, dude. And it means so much you coming on to get back and provide insight to the audience, man. I'm such a big fan. I got so much love for you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It was a pleasure being on. Thanks so much for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you, man.
I am thrilled to announce that An Actor Despairs is partnering with a wonderful CBD company called Kind Farms. Everyone out there has heard of CBD. I started taking it a few years ago when I first started getting sober and to help with my anxiety. Sadly, as one can do, I was overtraining in the gym, and a friend recommended a topical and a tincture to help with the pain. I tried it. It was okay. However, recently, I was introduced to a product that has really changed my life. Not only has it helped me with anxiety, but I am stronger than I have ever been. I'm able to carry out lifts my body used to prevent me from doing. Kind Farm products have single-handedly changed my life athletically and personally. They utilize 100% local licensed farmers, organic cultivation, and CO2 extraction for superior CBD. Kind Farms is turning CBD to a kind alternative to pharmaceuticals. Let's transform tobacco row into hemp row. If you want to get involved, please reach out. Together, we can make a difference. You can use my code RYAN10 for 10% off. You can find them on Instagram at Kind Farms Inc., all one word. That's KINDPHARMSINC, and their website is kindfarmsinc.com. Once again, my code for 10% off is RYAN10.